What's up, guys? Today's episode is sponsored by Melissa Flicks Author Services. Do you write for a living and get frustrated with trying to do it all? You don't have to. Melissa Flicks offers a wide range of affordable services ranging from book management to administrative tasks. Go to melissaflix.com, click contact to get started. Remember to put too many words in the subject line. Simplify your life so you have more time to write. Today's episode is also sponsored by LuLaRoe. LuLaRoe is a clothing company that provides comfortable, fashionable, and unique clothing for everyone. The famous soft, buttery leggings are only the beginning. LuLaRoe also has an amazing line of women's dresses, shirts, tunics, and t-shirts. Go to facebook.com/group/LuLaRoe Rebecca Clark. Type in code too many words to get 20% off your first order. Let's do the show. How's it going, everybody? Jamie Bedingfield here. You are listening to my podcast, Too Many Words, the place for the creative and more than slightly odd. Thanks for tuning in. If you're a regular, high five. If you're new, welcome, strap in, grab a hot beverage, and get ready. For those of you driving while listening to me right now, do not honk at the person in front of you with a red blinker. Just because you can turn on red doesn't mean you have to. Doesn't mean you need to throw yourself into traffic in order to go ahead and make that right. And be kind and respectful with your car. Don't speed through neighborhoods. I am the grumpy woman who yells at cars, and it just, even though I head out with my dog, and I'm like, I'm not going to yell at the cars, and that never works out. I yell at the cars. But I was walking earlier today, and a FedEx truck, yes, FedEx, if you're listening, nearly ran into me. They went over the white line and speeding past, and I kind of wanted to throw the bag of poop at them, but I didn't. I refrained. I did yell, though, and I probably would again if it happened again, which it probably will. So if you're driving, be kind, be respectful. Cars are privileges, and people, let the people walk. Let them walk. I have a super fun show in store for you all. I have Liz Moore on today, and I had such a great time talking to her. Really interesting, brilliant person there, and her words are incredible. Her recent release, The Unseen World, is something that we talked about, and I read it, and I recommend it to all of you. It is really just beautiful literature, and just a gorgeous, the structure of it is breathtaking. I closed the book when I was finished with it, and I was like, wow, that's some knowledge of character arcs right there. So, yes, grab it, pick it up. And Liz has other books too, so definitely check her out. She's got her way with words. Magic Unveiled, the magical realism anthology that I have a story included in, which was released last week, is getting awesome reviews and, moving units, and I'm excited. I'm excited to be a part of it. I'm proud of the story, and it's awesome to be in such great company. There's a lot of really cool magical realism stories in this anthology. So if you haven't picked it up yet, do it. And while we're on the subject of getting you to do things for me, if you aren't a subscriber, subscribe. And if you like it, leave a review. It helps. And so how's everybody doing? How's it going? What's new? Is it cold? I'm cold. We have the heat running. Actually, the other day, my son turned it up as high as it could go, and it's old furnace, and I was nervous that was going to be the last straw, because kids do have a way of pushing things until they can't be pushed anymore. My coffee table, which is missing 3 out of the 8 screws in the legs, can agree to that. I think it would, if it could talk, it would be backing me up right now and be like, yeah, Jamie's right. It's hard being sat on. I gotta say I'm feeling like a boring host recently, because I'm just saying the same stuff over again, because I am doing the same thing every day. I am chugging through this dystopian draft I'm obsessed. I'm, having trouble balancing obsession and reality and fiction and responsibilities. It's all the same. I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I hope to get 2 cups of coffee and a couple of chapters of a good book in before everybody else wakes up. And then it's the mad dash to get the kids to school, the dogs fed, the dogs walked, and then, off to work for me into my office, which I stay in until it's time to pick my kids up from school. I pick them up from school, and the chaos of an elementary school drop off or pick up, I guess in this case, is always so jarring because after a quiet candlelit office, not always candlelit, but when I think of it, when I think of taking to my office, I imagine it, illuminated with candlelight and music. And it's funny because I'm writing a dystopian and I'm creating this chaotic, broken, dangerous world, and there's terrible things at every corner. I mean, it makes me, and then, plus, I'm binge watching Walking Dead because there's a new season starting the 23rd. I'm so excited. But anyway, so my brain is just like in dystopian, apocalyptic mode right now. So like any rustle of the bushes or like, anybody at the grocery store is suspect. And it was funny because I was loading wash in my washing machine and my husband was walking down this, it was a dark hallway, but it's a hallway that leads to his office because we both work from home. When he's walking, he was holding his hoodie, and my first thing is like, why does he have a baseball bat? So yeah, I'm hallucinating baseball bats, and anytime I see a pickup truck, I'm like, watch out for raiders, stay vigilant. But yeah, so I don't have anything new going on by me. I'm writing better and faster and more than I ever have before. I'm attempting to keep up with my articles and all that stuff, and I'm going to declare a day article day so I can just focus on that. But anything doing like this adult stuff with like paying bills and functional home life and keeping kids organized and happy and attended to, and I didn't, it's just time is like zooming by for me. I don't feel like I have enough, and it's just crazy. I'm definitely feeling like I'm juggling a lot, but I also think I like it. I like juggling a lot. I like keeping busy. My grandmother always used to warn me about idle hands, so maybe it's like ingrained in me somehow that I need to keep my hands busy at all times so the vampires don't get me, because that's how she told it. Anytime there was any mistake to be made, it was watch out for the vampires. So, and she believed, she was believing in her words, so I believed her. I think that everyone needs to chill out, including myself. I'm so wound tight, and I think part of that is I'm just I'm so obsessed. I'm focused. Like I said, I have nothing new to say, guys. Nothing new. I'm writing and I'm eating my hair and talking to you about how I can't hold on to it all, even though I am, and I'm doing a pretty good job. And I'm ready to buy some fall boots because all of my boots got, filled with dog infractions over the summer, and I need to replenish my boot supply. And my hair is crazy because I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I'm refusing to get a haircut until I finish this book. I feel like it's necessary. I don't know why. Maybe I can just file the superstition under the hockey playoff beard deal. But regardless, it's working, and I'm about 2.5 weeks away from finishing and getting a haircut. As soon as I send the last bit, the last chunk of this version to my editor, I am calling my hairstylist, and I'm going to say, please take care of my mop, and the curls on the back of my head are sticking up, making me look like a chicken. So please help. All right. Well, I think that you guys are probably ready. I know that I'm ready. But let's go to my conversation with Liz. It's a good one. It's solid, and I had a great time talking to her. And Liz, if you are listening to this, I gotta say thank you again for coming on. It was a real pleasure. Liz, how's it going?
Hi, Jane. Great. And thank you so much for having me.
I've been looking forward to it. I finished The Unseen World a few weeks ago, and wow, just an incredibly structured story. The way everything comes together is it's really breathtaking. It's overall just incredible story.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. I really appreciate it.
Definitely seemed like a labor of love for sure.
Yeah, it definitely took me a while to research and a while to write.
I was thinking that because there is just so many details.
The details were sometimes difficult to find, but a lot of them are not things that are readily Googleable, for example. So I ended up having to talk to a lot of different experts who either were, for example, working in computer science during the era in which the book is primarily set, or experts who, even like on the city of Boston. I grew up outside Boston, but I never lived in the city, and especially not as an adult, so I don't actually know the city as well as I know the other cities I've lived in as an adult.
Well, and Boston is one of those cities, too. There's a lot of intricacies to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. Both cultural intricacies, geographical intricacies, sort of like there was a lot to research in that regard.
Well, so talking to different experts about that for research, that must have been in itself a pretty cool journey.
Yeah, it was. I loved getting to know Boston a little bit better because I have a kind of nostalgic attachment to it because it's where I grew up until age 18, and both my parents still work in Boston, although they're close to retirement. So they know the city pretty well. The book is set more specifically in a neighborhood called Dorchester, which I have an aunt who has lived in Dorchester since, I want to say, the 70s, so she's lived there for a long time.
Oh, wow.
And so I was a little bit familiar with Dorchester because of her, but the even more specific neighborhood of Dorchester is called Savin Hill, and I was not that familiar with Savin Hill, and so I was able to call on a former coworker of my sister's who grew up there, and she gave me a tour of the neighborhood, including like all the places where kids would hang out and get into trouble and that kind of stuff, which ended up becoming a lot of the scenes in the book when the protagonist Ada is first learning how to kind of be a kid. It was fun to imagine her into some of the locations that I was given a tour of by this woman who was so wonderfully helpful.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Ada is such an incredible character, very unique and but so strong. I really enjoyed just how she developed through the story.
Thank you so much.
So what led you to being like, okay, I have to write this book. I have to talk to all these people.
Well, I guess the initial inspiration for the book, in addition to being set in a time and place with which I was familiar. I mean, I was born in 1983, so I'm a little bit younger than Ada, but I certainly remember parts of the 80s, and I, of course, remember the 90s very well. And so it was a period piece in a way, and it was nice to revisit kind of like the culture of Boston. I think it has such a specific culture that I tried to include in the book. So that was one part of the inspiration of the novel. I've never written anything set in the Boston area, even though I grew up there. And then the other part was my own father's a scientist, although he's not a computer scientist, he's a physicist. So I grew up hanging around a lab, although I was not homeschooled. I went to a very normal public school, a large public high school, and public elementary and middle schools. I really grew up. Well, I was going to say I grew up appreciating culture and lab humor, but I don't think I did. I actually probably thought it was like weird, and I didn't want to, the way that kids think everything their parents do is weird. I didn't appreciate it as a kid, but as an adult, I can really appreciate it in retrospect, and I feel a certain nostalgia for that as well. There's like such a specific jargon that goes along with being part of a lab, or even being in it more generally in an academic setting. And it was fun to explore that and almost imagine a different path in life for me, because I ended up becoming sort of an English and writing person, and my dad is a scientist, and I think I always wished that I could please him by myself being good at science, but I never was, unfortunately.
Well, they are very different sides of the brain. I'm with you as far as I live in the world of the world, but the world of the words, I swap that around. But it is, though, to go back to what you were saying, that you weren't sure if you appreciated the jargon and the culture of it as a kid, but looking back, you do appreciate it. And it's funny how that is. I grew up with a very large Italian family, and it was very crazy, and there was all these details that I didn't even realize were cool or important until I was an adult.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Everything that I wished were different as a kid, a lot of that has become stuff that I miss as an adult, or really understand now how formative it was for me and the positive things I got out of it. And it's funny, I told you I just had a baby, and I find myself desperately trying to recreate some of the stuff that naturally was given to me, almost thoughtlessly was given to me. But I'm like, but how will I make sure that she, there was always a kind of benign neglect, my parents called it, of me and my sister, because they were very busy with their jobs, and that fostered in us a lot of independence. And so it's important to me to not hover and not be like a helicopter parent with my daughter, but I think it will be more contrived for me rather than a natural product of, I'll have to remind myself, no, give her space, give her time to be on her own, let her do her thing, instead of the kind of oh, what happened to the girls? Where are they? I forget. It was sort of what was going on in my household.
Totally. Well, perspective is such a powerful thing, and becoming a parent really does something to that perspective. I have 2 kids, 7 and 8. And trying to make the balance of, making sure that they feel like you're there, that you're not working too much, but also that, they have that room to just kind of grow without, helicopters and lawn mower parents, or all the terms in the
right.
in the Parent Map magazine.
Yeah, exactly.
How old is your baby?
She's 4 months.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So you're still in the thick of it.
Yeah. She's pretty good baby in general. But she's still a baby. So she still gets up once or twice a night, and she's, I'm working full time. I teach. So it's definitely an adjustment.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Especially with a job where you actually have to be somewhere at a certain time.
Exactly. Yep. There. Students too.
Yeah, those 3 a.m. The nighttime parenting was never something I was good at. I'm still not.
Yeah.
They still need it, especially if they're not feeling well, or my daughter who's 8, she'll just get up. So
yeah, that's funny. It feels like it. What's funny? I was told, I speaking of my own childhood, I recall I was always like a very fearful kid, and so I'd have nightmares, and I would get up, and I would call for my parents. Well, past the age where I should have been doing that, and I remember what stopped that for me, and maybe this will be helpful to you, maybe not, was my mother telling me, as if I hadn't thought of it before, which I hadn't. Like, she was like, if you wake up in the night, you can turn your light on and read. And I was like, I can do that? I can do that? And she was like, yeah, you can do that. And I never called for her again. It's just like it hadn't occurred to me that was one thing I could do if I found myself awake in the night.
Oh, fun. I actually, so I have done that with reading, and especially now that, she's getting older and she's, able to really sink her teeth into some stories.
Yeah.
But she'll still get out of bed. She likes to, if her blankets get ruffled or anything like that. Actually, yeah, tip for a new parent: don't fix her blankets.
Okay.
Let them be messy. She's like such
addicted to having like neat blankets.
Yeah.
Okay.
We really catered towards getting her to sleep because she was very hard to get to sleep. And she has like all these little intricacies now that she needs in order to go to sleep. But our son, our second born, that boy can sleep in a pile of toys.
That's a good tip. To let them be.
Yes. Yeah.
No, it's easy to fall in, like, because you get superstitious about, like, oh, well, this worked the one night she sleeps through the night. You're like, we have to recreate the exact, specific things that we did right before, and we have to recreate the atmosphere of the room because you're so desperate for sleep. You're like, what?
Yes, well, that's exactly what we did. I mean, she had like a lavender bath and, a mobile time and rocking, and then we'd sing to her, and like we were doing that exact thing until she was like 4.
I know. But I probably, it's not too late. I can correct myself, right? But I should tell myself.
Well, it's also, too, though, at the end of the day, whatever works in life, parenting, writing, you just got to lean into what's working, I feel like.
Yep, you're right.
So are you writing anything right now, or are you just...
So I started something when I was pregnant with the kind of desperate belief that I would have a very hard time writing after my daughter was born, which is totally true. So I had this period of trying to like hoard writing, like stockpile articles, stockpile short stories, and start a novel. And it's absolutely true. I don't think I've written a word of anything creative since she's been born. So that's like I think that's the longest I've gone. Especially, I mean, when I was home with her, it was all I could do to like survive, I felt like. And then now that I'm back at work, it's all I can do to keep up with my classes and teaching. So I'm hoping that at some point I will develop the discipline or the time to work writing into this schedule again. But it's really overwhelming at the moment. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, I was, because I had mine too. They're 17 months apart. And for like the first 2 years of being a parent, I barely wrote a word. It was just hard. And my mind wasn't there too, because like, I don't know if you're experiencing this, but the thing that really threw me kind of about becoming a mother all of a sudden is like there was this different person. So there was like the woman Jamie and the mom Jamie, and they don't always get along.
Yeah, that's totally true. Yep, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and it's intense. So I think like, and I don't know, at least for me, writing is emotionally draining sometimes, especially depending on what I'm working on. So if I'm already fatigued and tired and emotionally drained from life, it doesn't come as naturally. But I also think of creative thought kind of like, it, even if like it's not, clear or whatever, you're not even plotting something at the moment, I feel like stuff happens in the background. Because like sometimes like, you can just be doing the most random thing and like this thing sparks. And I feel like, that comes from somewhere. It's like, the subconscious, the mind.
Yeah, absolutely. But you do need time to think for that to happen. I feel like
it's true.
Like, no, I don't. I think about what's right in front of me at any given moment, and I rarely have those periods where I'm letting my mind kind of wander anymore. I do think I already sense it becoming easier. I feel like babies put themselves on a little bit more of a schedule the older they get. And so she's just becoming more and more, well, in certain ways, more and more predictable, which is helpful. I think I was in like total shell shock for the first month, maybe 3 months. And I was like, oh my God, is this my life now? I don't know how people ever do this. And one thing I wish people would tell expecting parents is like, it actually, well, for most people, I think it gets easier pretty quickly. Like the thing that you experience right off the bat is not the experience that you will always have as the mother, as the parent of a baby.
That is true. That is definitely true. It's really intense at first, but that does die down. Mm-hmm. And then 6 months is like kind of the magic mark. And then it's like, you're halfway through a year and it's like, okay, this is like, like you said, they get older and more predictable, but you also like, are able to just, you're more used to it at that point.
Yeah. You kind of like, it's like getting a degree in something. You develop skills like so quickly that it's like repetition. It's been a really fascinating experience too. And I'm sure that it will come out of my writing in some way at some point. I mean, I've written like so many parent characters without having been a parent yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But also, I would say until this moment in my life, the characters that I've been writing tend to be more like the children of parents. And so I wonder if something will flip for me where I become more interested in the parents themselves. Like Ada, for example, is very much, although, well, I shouldn't give anything away. For most of the book, she is the child of a parent, and the book is very focused on her being the child of this like very particular parent, rather than being a parent herself.
Yeah. Well, I really, the complexity of family relationships is something that came through your story so beautifully. And, I found myself relating to just that aspect, not, the exact dynamic there, but just the fact that it's, there's this complicated element to family that it makes it just more challenging in some ways and then easier to forgive because they are family, or harder, it's.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. We're simultaneously, like, we have higher expectations for our family, and we also, they can affect us more profoundly in both directions.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it's just sometimes or at least for me, like, I had a very complicated childhood, and it was easier for me to forgive family rather than not,
You also want to, like, I know so many adults who it's taken such a long time for them to even come to recognize the shortcomings of their family. And often it's like once they get into dedicated long-term relationships where they realize it's like having a mirror held up to your own family. And for the first time you realize like, oh, that behavior that I always just took as normal is not actually that normal. Like,
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and then, that added to the weirdness of, becoming a parent for me, because I did not have the best examples of what parents should be. And, when you're growing up and there's all these details, that's just your life. But, I can look back at that as I build my own and be like, oh man.
Yeah. I believe that happened. Right.
What would you say, aside from, the time consumingness of the, talking to different people, what was one of the more challenging aspects of writing The Unseen World?
So I've never written a book before that had so much of an element of like mystery to it. And in some ways you could almost describe the book as a mystery. And that was very difficult for me because the release of information was hard. I never wanted it to feel contrived that I was withholding information from the reader, but I also felt like I wanted there to be a little bit of an element of suspense. That was important to me in this book. So I had to find ways to release information at the appropriate time without having it feel manufactured, or I hope, that was my goal at least. And so that was really challenging, and it took me a long time to figure out like why certain information would have been withheld and to create believable motives for having certain information withheld.
That is, I'm actually, my work in progress at the moment has a mystery element for the first time. And that is very tricky.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely. What do you share? Why are you sharing it? Why aren't you sharing the other stuff? Because like, with that, that style, it's really easy to make the readers feel like, they were deceived, or right. There's, plot holes because they're like, wait, you didn't, because you want to make sure that they're on that path with you. It's tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. That was really hard. It's the closest that I think I've ever come to writing within like a particular genre. And I have so much respect for people who write in that genre, because I made an attempt to do it, and I think I really learned how difficult it was.
To go back to what you were saying with you having fun setting the story in Boston and having that culture come through, it definitely does. I love Boston. I had a lot of family that lived in Massachusetts, so I went to Boston a lot as a kid. And then my best friend went to Emerson in Boston, so I spent my freshman and sophomore weekends in Boston. So I developed a really fun little rendezvous with the city.
Yeah, Boston has many detractors. I've learned after I left Boston that's the case. I think it has the nickname the hub of the universe. And I think when you're in Boston or when you grow up in Boston, you just assume like, oh, everyone else loves Boston. But, there are some really valid criticisms of the city that I get. I totally agree with in certain ways. But in other ways, it's just a wonderful, humorous place. The thing I miss about Boston is everybody has the best sense of dry humor.
Yes.
It's so funny. I went to a wedding for an old friend in Boston recently, and I hadn't been around a big group of like Boston natives like that basically since I was in high school. And I haven't laughed that hard in such a long time. We were put at a table with like perfect strangers and ended up being like, fast friends. And they had like hilarious running commentary for every speech that was made. And there's just a sense of like loyalty and really like generations upon generations of friends who the children of the parents become friends with each other, and then those kids become friends with each other, and they develop this kind of like language and jargon that I tried to kind of include in my book as much as I could.
Well, and it has a special kind of heart that other cities, they just don't have. And I mean, growing up so close to Manhattan, going into the city was a big part of, my whole life. And, but I know that some people love Manhattan. I'm not personally, I get overstimulated and it feels very large. And, there's definitely cool parts about it. And there's nothing like New York at Christmas time.
Oh, yeah.
But Boston was like always this, like, I don't know, it felt like this, like, groovy, soul-filled city, like not far from New York. And it was always fun to go there.
Yeah, people have a special knack for, they'll 1 second they'll be like ragging on each other in a way that you've never heard before, but it's always this really kind of like benevolent, it comes from a place of like deep love and respect. And then, the next second they'll be like reminiscing about the old days, and it's just got such a specific culture. Maybe it comes out of being an old city in the context of the U.S., or I don't know what. It has deep roots. There's a lot of like Irish culture that's affected it too, I think, just because it has such a large Irish population. And I've been to Ireland several times, and I recognize like there's a brand of humor among Irish people that I see as being somehow similar to the brand of humor in Boston. And I don't know.
Interesting.
All mixed up in it for me.
Ireland. I've never been.
It's lovely. You can go.
It's on the list of places to go.
Yeah.
Well, and it's just hard. We have 3 huge dogs, so it makes it very hard to travel for long periods of time.
Really get that. Yep.
And one of our dogs is a Rottweiler, and he's sweet as as anything. He's a great dog, but not everybody's willing to dog sit a Rottweiler. So
yeah,
quite a few. Yeah. So one day,
I know.
my son has told me he wants to go to Japan for his 8th birthday. So I was like, I don't know if that's going to happen, but I like where your head is at.
Me too. I've always wanted to go. I guess you're on the right side of the country to go to Japan too.
Yeah. Well, we've just in the city, in the area, we've got a lot of just Asian culture at our fingertips. That wasn't something that I had available to me living in North Jersey.
No, totally. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. No, my daughter started. She was eating sushi by like 4.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I have a niece and nephew who also like sushi, and I don't think I tried sushi until I got to New York at 18 or 19 or something.
Yeah, I was around there when I late teens at least.
Yeah.
It's funny. The differences of the area. I mean, when I came out here, I was like, where's all the crusty bread?
That's great. Yeah, that is a northern New Jersey cuisine. That's true.
Well, and pizza too. Like, pizza here is very fancy. Truffle oils.
Sometimes you just need a slice of cheese.
You really do. And and I mean, I like the doughy crust with the bubbles and stuff, and it's all very flat crust around here.
Bagels are, actually, I hear Seattle has good bagels, but
you know what? I've heard that too, but I gotta say, I have not found proof.
Okay. New York has the market cornered as far as I'm concerned on pizza and bagels.
I agree.
With those things.
Mm-hmm. And deep fried hot dogs.
I've never had a deep fried hot dog.
Oh, wow.
No.
There was this place in Clifton, New Jersey, which was where my husband was living when we first met. And he lived right by this place called Rut's Hut. Mm-hmm. And they just deep fried those hot dogs.
That sounds really good.
Yeah, and then you could get like chili on. Yeah. I'm all about that kind of cuisine, but yeah, you get chili on it, and it's a blast.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful.
So, The Unseen World, that was your second book?
It was my third book.
Okay.
I wrote one I wrote one during and just after college that I published in 2007 called The Words of Every Song. I used to be a musician and play in bands and stuff, and so that book it's fiction, it's a novel and stories, but it kind of was inspired by my time playing around various little venues in New York and bands and stuff. And it's about just like a group of musicians and producers and people working in the music industry in New York around the turn of the millennium.
I'm really excited to read that. I have that on my next up list.
That's cool.
I'm really excited. I love stories about musicians.
Yeah, this one was, it's funny. I think it's the first book I ever wrote. And so when I look at it now, there are parts of it that make me cringe, if I'm being honest. But there's also something kind of sacred about it to me because it is like a time capsule of those years in New York for me. It's become a period piece. When I was writing it, I was writing it around the time that it takes place. But now it's more than it came out in 2007, but I was writing it between the years of like 2003 and 5, probably 2003 and 6. So anyway, it's over a decade old, and the music industry has changed so much, and the music business has changed so much.
It really has. From that, that's kind of a unique time too, because the music industry was kind of putting themselves back together after the whole 90s boom being awesome, and then we have
kind of crashing in a way. That was the
NSYNC time.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think in the book there's like one reference to an iPod. Like
nice.
It's like it's so crazy how everything has changed so rapidly since then. And that's the way things go. It's just funny. It's like a little diorama of the music industry in those years.
Oh, that's awesome. Now I'm even more excited. How was the journey of getting published with your first book? How was that for you?
That was a really weird and specific. I had a sort of non-traditional entry into being published. I went to Barnard College, which is one of these colleges that's like a factory for writers and editors and agents. There's just a lot of published writers that come out of Barnard. So I was an English major, and so I took a lot of creative writing classes, and I was writing this series of stories about the music business, basically, in those classes. And by the time I graduated, I had like probably 7 interconnected stories, and I didn't know if I would ever do anything with them, but I had a grandmother who was still then alive, and she was very sweet and supportive of my writing, and she must have like subscribed to Barnard magazine or something, because she was the one who found out that there was going to be a conference for writers at Barnard of all the a lot of alums who had graduated and who had become writers, editors, agents, publishers. And so she called me up and said, I will pay your fee. I think it was like $30 to go for the day. If you want to go. And I said, okay. And I went to this panel on getting published. And afterward, I spoke with one of the panelists who was an agent, and said, I just graduated and I have these stories about the music industry and I don't know if they're any good and I haven't finished them. And she said, well, just send them to me and I'll take a look. And I did. And she was actually interested enough to sign me as a client.
Wow.
And gave me the motivation to finish the series, and then she sold the book. And so
that's awesome.
I know. I think I didn't realize at the time how lucky all that was. Like, I think when you're handed something, you're like, oh, this is the way it works. And now I should say I got my that was good karma, but I experienced the opposite side of that because she retired shortly after selling my first book, and then I had to do the actual process of getting an agent. I still had a leg up because I had one published book, right. But I was going through the process of getting an agent about 4 years later when I had written my second book, Heft, and that was much more difficult, and I was roundly rejected by a lot of people, and I had to go through like multiple rounds of the way that most people.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that way. The first one sounds like a fairy tale, but
that was pretty.
That's awesome. That's
right time kind of thing.
Yeah, those are nice.
Yeah, and actually I'm on my third agent now, so I had a sort of similar, like a sob story with my second agent too. So I've definitely paid my after the first one, but
still though, to get, like you said, you have the leg up because you've already published. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, that's awesome. That's really cool. It's a process, and I think a lot of people don't realize it until they're in it, and that's kind of like everything though.
Yeah, that's very true. I sort of feel like every author I've spoken to at every stage in his or her career is always like lamenting something or other. Like, I think by nature we're all like negative and pessimistic people, and like whoever you're jealous of, they're jealous of somebody else. Does that make sense?
No, it totally does. Well,
except for like, I don't know, Toni Morrison, who's like, I'm at the top of my game. I can't do anything better.
I don't know. I think he still experiences self-doubt. It took me a while to figure out that like that part of my process was to like get horribly negative, with certain things. And it was like, okay, and then work out the pain. And I think it's moodiness is part of it.
Right. No, I get it.
Liz, could you tell everybody where they can find you?
Sure. My website is www.lizmoore.net. My Twitter handle is Liz Moore Books, all one word. I have a Facebook page that you can search for, Liz Moore Author. And yeah, those are all the places online where you can find me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time and coming on, and it was fun talking to you.
It was so fun to talk to you. Great conversation.
Definitely.
Best luck.
Thank you. You too. And that wraps it up for today, guys. It was good times. Thanks for listening. You can check me out on Twitter at @MeBettingfield, and the show at Too Many Words Pod, Facebook under the same names. You can read my column in the Matters of Kindness Unfeminine Collective. And everything else in between and above and below you can find on my site at jamiebettingfield.com. I'll talk to you next week.